Hello and welcome to my concept of the rework of the Skull Merchant. Thank you for taking the time to click on the video. I will be going over an outline concept using my best with graphics and visuals to demonstrate how I would personally make changes to this rather controversial killer. If you would like to skip an introduction to the current and past renditions of this killer design, please skip to the timestamp mentioned here. If you would like to stick around, I'll get into it. Released in March 2023, the Skull Merchant came into Dead by Daylight with a, let's say, a less than colourful reception. From the original hype of the teaser images and trailers, people's perception of what this killer was going to be were light years away from what behaviour actually offered us in the PTB, leading to an immediate disappointing start for a lot of people. Her design, some people say, left a lot to be desired, and her power, mori, and animation definitely had some mixed reception, especially since they didn't seem to fit the theme of the character called the Skull Merchant. But the biggest controversy by far was the power itself, as it was fairly simple, but also incredibly abusable. From the PTB, the red flags for the power of the Skull Merchant was more than evident. The main one being that she could place a drone on top of the generator and have constant surveillance on it. On top of that, anyone that came within range of the drone would slowly start to become exposed, leading to survivors being stuck not being able to complete gens, as even when the opportunity arrived to disable the drone at the touch of a button, the Skull Merchant could reactivate it immediately. This left games to last forever, as the merchant would refuse to use her drones on anything but the generators, and if they were to use them outside of the generators, for instance at loops, this would be unideal, as most survivors would simply lose the loop, or if the survivor was already injured, would be unaffected by the drone, except for certain add-ons, which slowed the survivor down by a small percent. The merchant would then release in the state, save for a few minor changes, and thus would be forever cemented as the community's absolute worst rated killer. She would cause immediate survivor disconnects, and some merchants would even drive the game to such a stop the server would time out before the generators were even complete, causing the entire survivor team to die, granting the win to the killer. Along with this is the famous game of the group of tournament survivors who spent 55 minutes going against the Skull Merchant, holding down a 3-gen.
This is the player. He's using a 3-gen build on Skull Merchant. And he thinks that he can beat Eternal very easily. So let's see if this is true. So we see that is a pretty good 4-gen on the top side of the Torment Creek. And throughout this game, Eternal tried a number of strategies and kept switching it up to see what works. He is kicking the generators left and right, and it seems like there's no gen progress really being made. This is very inspiring, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, there's like no progress, you can't even kick it. He wanted to kick it, but he can't because it's zeroed. The gen is also close to zero. Oh, he's faking the rotation, it doesn't work though. Oh! No, they're not falling for it. This is excellent teamwork. They call out perfectly, and I think at this point, it almost looks like this is not holdable anymore. Is it gonna pop? No, the gen is gonna pop! The gen knock has been broken over. Alright, the survivors are very happy about this. Well, GG's all around.
55 minutes against a tournament team? That's insane. Skull Merchant would remain in the state until October 2023, a whole 6 or 7 months after her initial release, and would come with a completely new power. This time having the drones act more as a trap than an area of effect aura. This rework would change Skull Merchant completely, but to a big portion of people, not for the better. Her power now would involve dropping a drone that rotates on the spot and would tag any survivor that walks through the drone's beams. This beam would start in stealth mode, meaning you are unable to see the beams, but you can see small bits of light on the drones, and will go into search mode when a survivor walks through the drone, leaving big visible drone beams rotating around the outside of the drone. The beams can be avoided if you stand still or are still in general, or if you crouch under the beams. You can then disable the drone by doing a small minigame, and it will be inactive for 45 seconds. If you fail the minigame, you will be tagged by the drone and gain a stack. If you collect 3 stacks by any means, you will become broken and be given a claw trap. A claw trap sends a signal to the Skull Merchant's radar, which you can use to track you for the duration of the claw trap, which lasts for 45 seconds. Whilst the claw trap is on you, Skull Merchant also gains a small haste buff, which stacks with other claw traps on other people, up to a maximum of 7%. Should you be tagged by the drone whilst this claw trap is on you, you will be hindered and the merchant will be given killer instinct. Bearing in mind there is no way to remove these stacks except for waiting for the claw trap to fall off on its own. And if you struggle to keep up with that word salad, you are probably not alone. As for many, that's the reason she still may be considered problematic. Her power is just too complicated, in particular for new players. However, when survivors do know what to do against her, she can be incredibly weak, as her strength and her power comes from people walking into her claw traps from across the map. Meaning she is a certified noob stomper. However, since she can no longer hold games hostage anymore, she is objectively in a much healthier state. So it really does come down to fun and accessibility for those who don't want to do homework to understand the many complexities of this killer's kit. I want to stress that I am not against the current iteration of the merchant. I think she could work with some minor tweaks or maybe some streamlining of her other buffs and rebuffs to make them more manageable for newer players. But I do like the idea of reworking a killer power to something that should hopefully still feel like what the killer should be, both in theme and aesthetically, but also making them feel fun and fair to go against. None of these will ever make it into the game, and it's entirely for entertainment. I want more interactivity with the drones from both the merchant and the survivor's perspective without them feeling too oppressive or useless. I also want them to be a helpful chase tool, but not be too easy to get their full potential out of, so I have changed the way drones work entirely. Let's take a look at my rework idea for Eyes in the Sky. Instead of 6 drones, the Skull Merchant will now only have 4, but they will work a bit differently. They will no longer start in stealth state, and so the drones will be visible from the moment they are placed. The drones will now have 2 modes. Dropping a drone in any area will have them start patrolling the map, similar to that of a Nemesis zombie. They will move throughout the map on their own, looking for survivors at about walking speed, with their rotating beams as before. Now, however, as they are moving through the map, they can pick up survivors doing conspicuous actions, though you will still be invisible if you crouch or stand still. If a drone is hacked like before, it will ping to the Skull Merchant of the location of the broken drone for 10 seconds, and then it will return to the merchant. These drones will travel map-wide and will not confine to one area to discourage any type of regen activity. Once any drone has been deployed, it can be controlled manually. This will act similar to Singularity's pods, except they are not static and they can be moved up to a speed of 3.9 meters per second. This is slightly slower than Survivor's running speed, and can be used manually to attack survivors with stacks. This is a more hands-on approach, and survivors won't be able to stand still or crouch to escape getting stacked. Survivors can still, however, either run from a drone or disable it. The beams will not be present on a drone being controlled manually, so survivors will be able to tell when it's being controlled. Whilst a merchant is controlling a drone, she will be undetectable until she relinquishes control or the drone is hacked. If tagged by a drone, survivors will receive a stack up to 3. You can only gain 1 stack every 5 seconds. At 1 stack, your location will be pinged to the Skull Merchant's radar, as it is currently. This will no longer, however, affect her haste. At 2 stacks, one of the survivors' perks will be displayed on the Skull Merchant's radar when pointing the radar at the survivor in chase, and it will be stored in the databank. The databank will be explained soon. At 3 stacks, this will make the survivor be vulnerable to the new Skull Merchant's claw attack, which I will cover now. Skull Merchant can either have her basic M1 attack or use a new M2 attack. This will be a short dash, similar to that of Demogorgon or Wesker. It will have a 1 or 2 second charge time and have a prompt, such as a grunt from the Skull Merchant to alert the survivors of an attack. This will add a dodgeable attack that survivors can work around. When a survivor is at 3 stacks from a drone, they will become exposed when using this attack. The 3rd stack will last for a total of 30 to 60 seconds, depending on balance, after which the survivor will return to 2 stacks, or they can have their stacks completely removed by a databank. Databanks are computer terminals scattered across the map. Only one could be active at a time and will deactivate and reactivate somewhere else when a survivor uses them. Databanks will use a minigame, similar to that of hacking a drone, to completely remove survivor stacks. The active databanks will be visible to Skull Merchant at all times, meaning she can know when a survivor has used it. Failing a minigame at a databank will alert Skull Merchant to your location, but will not add any additional stacks. Finally, Skull Merchant herself can use these databanks to check the number of stacks survivors currently have, as well as see which perks the drones have detected. With this rework, I aim to make the user experience for the survivor less punishing and more interactive. With the databanks, drones and stacks accumulating natural slowdown without being too oppressive, and the drone stacks having definite negatives, but not allowing the Skull Merchant to dominate inexperienced teams. I also wanted drones to be more interactive from Merchant herself, with the ability to manually take control of the drones and be able to effectively use them in chase. I really wanted to dive into the surveillance and intel side of the Skull Merchant, hence the ability to track perks, as it may allow Merchant to play around some of the playstyles the survivors have access to, which is an incredibly powerful ability, although this idea would need to be tested, as it may have either negligible effects or be too powerful, and need to be either nerfed or removed entirely. Now moving on to add-ons. AD Volante Issue 1 reduces the success zone of survivors with 1 stack from the drone by -20%. High current upgrade. Clearing stacks from the databanks takes an additional minigame. High powered floodlight. Survivors with 2 stacks from the drone also become blinded until wiped by the databank. Ultrasonic speaker. The stack immunity window is reduced from 5 seconds to 4 seconds. New add-on Steel Grease. Cooldown from a missed claw attack is reduced by -10%. Adaptive lighting. The undetectable status effect will remain 10 seconds after operating a drone manually. Low power mode. The auto drones will patrol 50% slower. Shotgun speakers. When a drone is disabled, the survivors will be affected by the deafened status effect for 30 seconds. Stereo remote mic. The notification for disabled drones will remain for an additional 100%. Supercharge. Hacking a drone will take an additional minigame. New add-on Extra Part. Movement whilst dashing with the claw attack is 20% faster. Rare add-ons. Brown noise generator. Survivors with 3 stacks will suffer from the oblivious status effect for the duration of the 3rd stack. Infrared upgrade. The auras of survivors who have used the databanks will be revealed for 4 seconds. Loose screw. Survivors with 3 stacks will suffer from the exhausted status effect for the duration of the 3rd stack. Powered glass. The 3rd stack lasts an additional 20 seconds. Vital targeting processor. The Skull Merchant will gain 5% haste when giving survivors a stack with the manual drone for 30 seconds. However, this does not stack with any other haste builds. New add-on Oil Blade. Charge time for the claw attack is reduced by 10%. Very rare add-on. Advanced movement prediction. Auras of survivors tagged in auto drone are revealed for 5 seconds. Geographical readout. 2 stacks from drones now reveals 2 perks instead of 1. Prototype rotor. Increases rotation speed of drones by 10%. Randomized trade. Grants a Skull Merchant undetectable status effect when a survivor is tagged to the 3rd stack by a manual mode. New add-on Sharpened Blade. Using a dash claw attack on a pallet will now break it. Ultra rare add-ons. Expired batteries. Drones will now remain in place but cannot be moved in manual mode, but they can still be aimed, and can also not scan conspicuous actions. Iridescent unpublished manuscript. When a drone is disabled, the Skull Merchant will gain undetectable for 30 seconds, and the survivor who disabled the drone will gain the terror radius. This has a cooldown of 60 seconds. New add-on Serrated Blade. Using a claw attack outside of 3 stacks will now apply Deep Wounds effect. The 3rd stack, however, is now 25% shorter in duration. With these changes to the way drones work and with Skull Merchant's additional claw attacks, it should be an ideal way to remedy some of the main grievances that the community has with the Skull Merchant. Players who play solo should hopefully not have to suffer because their whole team runs through drones, and change in the way the drones now move should remedy the drop at loot playstyle, as the drone will move away once placed. Merchants will now have to control the drone manually to build up stacks at loots, and there may be a risk if players opt to run from the drone or try to chase it down and disable it. There would need to be some adjustments and testing to see if any of the functions can be abused, but as this is just a concept, it really is just impossible to say. In conclusion, I wanted to double down on the Skull Merchant's surveillance type theme with the ability to detect and track survivors' perks to discover their weaknesses and increase her lethality with her unique claw trap weapon. As said before, this is simply a concept and any imbalances would require testing, which unfortunately is not possible in this situation, but as a baseline. Please let me know what you think, what works or what doesn't work. Thank you so much for making it this far, and I look forward to possibly making more of these in the future. If you're curious, I have another video on Nurse about her rework which was made over a year ago, and this is my 2nd video. Peace.
The night is dark, the light is past, the Skull Merchant's coming, so your time here won't last. Don't try to